I think it is a good tradition to have in the margins of these big international conferences where you have 150, 170 people participating from over 50 countries. I think it is a good tradition to have in the margins, on top of these big conferences, a specific roundtable, a specific seminar that gathers only the Tempus experts. I think it is important for you to be in touch with the Bologna experts from the EU's internal lifelong learning program. It is very important for them to be in touch with you, but I think it is also important for you to feel a bit as a community and to see a bit the unity of the program, of the Tempus program that we are having. So I think it is a very good thing. Today's agenda has been distributed to you already in advance of the meeting. These roundtable meetings, these seminars, we have always given them a different subject. Last time when we were in Brussels, the objective of the seminar that we had with the Tempus experts was more training, was more briefing. I think we had at the time something on the learning outcomes presented by an expert from Lithuania on learning outcomes on ECTS that was presented to you in March at the conference in Brussels. This time our objective of the seminar, of the roundtable, will be to look a bit back at the activities that have been carried out by the higher education reform experts in 2010 and to develop on that basis also future ideas. So today's meeting is basically to review the report that we have been drawing up for the activities having been carried out in 2010, look at examples of good practice in the various Tempus countries that have been implemented, and on this basis look towards the future, towards activities that we can and that we will implement in 2011 for the second half of the year, 2012 and 2013. But maybe before going into the agenda and before passing over the floor to my colleague Jacques for the presentation of the outline of the report, I think there are two things that I would like to do first. And one thing is just to make a very rapid go through all the different rows here, to give each of you the possibility to introduce himself, herself, with the name and the institution and the country that you're coming from. I think that I know most of you, but I'm not sure that I know all of you. So for me, I would also very much appreciate basically to be able to put the face to the name and vice versa. And I think it is also important for you to know who you are and who the experts from the other countries are. That is one thing. And the second thing, before going into the agenda, you can reflect whilst you will be presenting yourself, would be a bit to have your feedback on the conference that we have just been assisting in over the past 2 days. If you have any feedback, any proposals for improvement, positive, negative feedback that you would like to share with us. We are going to have another conference, as was mentioned yesterday, this year in October in Lisbon. And if things go well, we will have other types of events of this type for more conferences of the years 2012 and 2013. So if there are proposals for improvement, recommendations, these will certainly be taken on board by us as much as we can. But okay, I will maybe then... Okay, so thank you for the feedback. I will try to reply a bit to your suggestions. I mean, first of all, I take the point that the open space seems to have been a popular component, a popular dimension of the conference. And I mean, the colleagues from UNICA are here together with us, and I think they will certainly take that up at the next conference as well. And it might also be something that we can take up in any regional events that we will be organizing under Tempus over the next years. So that is one point where there seems to be unanimous agreement on. I go a bit back to the colleague from Bosnia and Herzegovina, saying that she was at the beginning a bit scared to give a presentation in one of the working groups, and that, she was a bit scared, a bit afraid of giving a presentation. I assisted myself in the workshop, and I think that you did an excellent job in your presentation, and I think that the people from the EU were very interested in what you were saying about the reality in your country, and I think it was really very good to have that presentation by a Tempus expert in this bigger group, because I think, I mean, one of the objectives of the conference is obviously to bring the European Union closer to the neighboring countries and vice versa. And I think if the Tempus experts are taking, and I said it also in my introductory remarks on Monday morning, I would really invite you to take a more and more active role in these conferences. You will certainly be approached for the Lisbon conference and for other events over the next 2 years, whether you would be interested in delivering maybe a keynote speech and contributing to a workshop. I can only encourage you, based on the experience that you had. Also, the colleague from Israel was heavily involved in giving one of the presentations in the workshops. There were several. The National Tempus office from Russia was chairing one of the working groups, so there was a certain involvement already of the Tempus experts, and I can only invite you basically to get more and more active also in delivering contributions and delivering your own presentations. Now, the last aspect of what was being said is that I think the conference was really very much, I mean, as much as such a conference can be, because it was a conference with 50 countries, 170, 180 participants. I think as much as such a big event can have a practical approach and a practice-oriented approach, I think this has been more or less achieved. I take obviously the point you were saying that some of the Bologna experts, you said that they were reluctant to share their experience. Probably it was not that they were reluctant, but that there was not enough room and enough space in order to have in-depth discussion on each of the topics. Probably there was no real reluctance, but it was just a question maybe of the format. So I think that in terms of getting it more practical, still, for the next conference in Lisbon, we can give it a try, bearing in mind, however, that with these big conferences with 180 participants and 50 countries, there are limits to what you can do in terms of really having down-to-earth work and writing yourself. There are a bit limits to that. And my second answer to that remark would be that obviously these are the big events that we are organizing, but we are organizing on top of that seminars in the various regions. We will have one now in Central Asia, just coming up in the first half of July. We already had regional seminars in Albania for the Western Balkans, in Georgia for the Caucasus countries. We will have one for the Southern Mediterranean countries in Barcelona. We have had one in Moscow for Eastern Europe. So, I mean, these smaller seminars are also a place where that more technical and where that more practice-oriented discussion can take place. But obviously, I take the point at a general level that we should at least keep the level of practice orientation that we have had now in Oslo, also for the next seminar, international conference that we will have in Lisbon. But anyway, thank you very much for your comments. I think that is very helpful. If you have other thoughts, other reflections still on the international conference, please let us know. You can always email us, and we're always happy to take your feedback on board. Good. That allows us then to go a bit into the real agenda of this morning's meetings. As I said, I mean, these roundtable meetings have had different purposes, different objectives in the past. The objective of today's roundtable of the Tempus experts is definitely to present to you the report on the 2010 activities in the various Tempus countries, in the various Tempus regions that we have elaborated on the basis of contributions that we were getting from the national Tempus offices. And if you take your time and read through the report, we have tried to make it as much down to earth as possible, with very many examples of good practice, of things that have been happening at national level, at regional level, initiatives that you have been taking together with your national Tempus office. So it is a very practical report with lots of examples of good practice, and based on that, obviously, we should reflect on the future. And for each of the three main tasks of the higher education reform experts, so national activities, national training, briefing activities that you are implementing, policy support activities, and communication activities, we have identified one example of a particularly relevant activity implemented at national level in one of the Tempus regions, and I'm very grateful to those of you that have accepted to give a short presentation on your experience that you have had in these areas. And obviously what we will be discussing now on the past, 2010, will certainly be relevant for our reflection for the future. I mentioned already that we are redesigning, that we have the possibility now to redesign certain aspects of this higher education reform experts activity for the years to come. So any feedback that you may have in this respect will be useful, and I will come back a bit to our intentions concerning the renewal of our contract that we have with the university network UNICA. I will come back to that later on in the agenda, and would then like to pass on the floor to Jacques for a short presentation of the report and of the various activities as such. Jacques.
Thank you, Phil. So,